One day while I was working at that convenience store, a lady came in and didn't like some policy that we had. I don't remember what it was at this point. It was some sort of thing that like I had to ask of her, and she didn't like that I was asking it of her, and we went back and forth about it. And I made it very clear that like, look, this is the policy. You can take it or leave it. And she stormed out, making it very clear that this was going to be a problem for me, which many people do that. I don't care. But then when I described the situation to one of my coworkers who'd been there for significantly longer than I had, she explained that this lady was a regular and her threats weren't entirely empty. So basically, the story as I heard it is that at some point before I got there, the store manager hired her daughter as a cashier, and then the daughter was caught stealing from the company. Now, the store manager was very close friends with the territory manager, and so when this came up, there was some talks happened. The resolution that ended up happening was that the cashier had to quit. The store manager was demoted to a deli manager. The store manager that I knew was brought in to replace her, and no one ever pressed charges or made a big deal or like was officially allowed to talk about the fact that she had been caught stealing. So that lady that came in that I had an issue with was the daughter that got fired for, well, that quit for stealing from the company. So that was my first encounter with her. The second one happened a few weeks later. At this point, we had a change to the policies in terms of how often we card for cigarettes, because that happens from time to time. There's a cycle to it. I can explain that in another video. At that time, we were required to card everybody. Every single person who bought cigarettes, we had to card them. And so when she came in with some guy and tried to order cigarettes, I asked to both of their IDs, which is what I was required to do. And she was very angry about that. We kept going back and forth about it. She was like, "This is my son. You know what? Why would you card him?" And I was like, "Listen, this is I legally have to. Like, if there's the possibility that you're buying for a minor, I have to check that. Like, I don't know that this is whether this is for you or not." So we went back and forth about this. She stormed out, didn't buy anything, was furious with me. And obviously, nothing came of that. I did hear some complaining. Apparently, the deli manager had been complaining a little bit about it, but all that happened at a time when I wasn't there. Because remember, I was a weekend closer. I only worked there on the weekends and only the closing shift. So whatever happened during the day, during the week when the deli manager was there, I only heard about later. Then COVID started. And we in Massachusetts had some rules about that we had to deal with in terms of the convenience store, like how many people we could allow in the store at a time and whether or not we could serve people in certain circumstances and all this other stuff. And one of those rules was that if we got caught allowing people to be in our store unmasked, then we would get fined. And obviously, if we got fined on my shift, on my watch, that was going to come down on me. And so I was pretty strict about this. I wouldn't allow people to shop unless they had a mask on, because that was a legal requirement. I had to do that. So she comes back in one day to buy cigarettes. She comes up to the counter, no mask. And I said, "Hey, you need to have a mask on." She goes, "Look, I'm just on my way home from work. I just need to buy a pack of cigarettes." I was like, "Okay, but I cannot do this transaction until you put on a mask. Like, you need to put on a mask or you need to leave." And she started ripping into me about this. Like, "I don't need a mask. I'm just going to be here for like 5 seconds." And I was just like, no, like, this is the rule. Put on a mask or leave. And so I had actually picked up the cigarettes that she wanted, and I was holding them in my hand while we were talking. And she goes, "This is the third time I've had a problem with you." And I went, "You know what? You're right. It is. Get out." I told her, 3 times you've come in here and shown absolute disrespect for me and this establishment. 3 times you've come in here and made a scene over a policy just because you don't like it and think it shouldn't apply to you. I'm done dealing with you. You're cut off. You're not welcome here during my shift anymore until you learn how to get some respect. Get out before I throw you out." So she left. Now, this was a Saturday night. And so the next day, I come in, and my older coworker, who was always kind of afraid to confront people about the masks, but was very pleased to be working with me because she knew no one would be in there with masks, and she was a high risk demographic. And so she was very happy to not have to worry about masks for at least some of her shifts the week. And so when I came in and she was stressed out, I knew something was going on. Turns out the territory manager had come in the morning and told everybody that we were no longer allowed to enforce mask mandates, that corporate had informed him that we were not allowed to be kicking people out for not wearing masks. We were not allowed to be denying service for people not wearing masks. We were not allowed to be doing any of this. We were not allowed to enforce mask mandates. We had to let people do whatever they wanted to do, and there was nothing we could do about it. And she was upset because obviously this meant that there was no protection for her anymore at this store. And so I said, okay, well, let me see what I can do about this. So I grabbed my phone and I looked up the contact information for the HR department, the HR director for the corporate offices, because we were a corporate store. And I sent an email to her and I said, hey, in better wording, but I basically said, hey, it has come to my attention that corporate has decided that we're not allowed to enforce mask mandates. And I am concerned about this because it means going against local and state laws. And if I'm going to be responsible for breaking local and state laws, I would really like that in writing so that I can show people, like the police, why we're not complying with local and state laws. And also, I'm wondering if this is a wise idea. At this point, it's Sunday night. I know that they won't see it till the next morning. I know I won't hear anything until Saturday. But I tell my coworker, hey, I've sent an email. I think this is going to get resolved, but we'll see what happens. So then the week goes by. I'm doing other stuff. I'm not really thinking about it. Saturday, I come in, and my coworker is ecstatic. And apparently, the territory manager got ripped into, and he came into the store and apologized and explained that the corporate policy is, in fact, to comply with local and state laws, and that any attempt to prevent us from doing so would be met with disciplinary action. And apparently the deli manager was particularly mad about this, although most people didn't really know why she took any sort of personal offense to it. But about a week later, that lady came in very meek, very apologetic, and I never had another problem with her.